He's gonna get. He's gonna fight me. He's something like me. He thinks he's awesome.
Hey everybody, this is me, the Undead Viking. I'm here to talk to you about the game Anno, Urbis, the fight for Rome. Now, I don't have a game box or anything because this is a prototype that I was sent to me. But this is a game, well, it's obviously the fight for Rome. Each person is going to take on the role of a general. Now, I don't know how much you know about, like, the history of Rome and what have you, but generals were not only generals of armies back then, but they were statesmen and politicians and what have you. And a lot of them had, visions of glory for themselves, and they wanted to be bigger than what they were. Each person is like one of these generals, and they want to vie for control of Rome. They want to be like the next, like, emperor, if you will. Or Caesar, I guess would probably be a better name for it. But each person will have units on a board. This is dudes on a map. Units on a board that they will move their armies about the board. They're going to actually be building up the surrounding area of Rome, but they're also going to have gladiator combats. They're going to build temples to different gods, and those gods are going to give them powers. It's a heck of a lot of fun, and it is a game that has a little bit of randomness to it, but it has a lot of deterministic factors going on as well. So why don't I show you how the game is played, and then we'll come back here and we'll talk a little bit more about it. Alright, so this is Anno Urbis, the fight for Rome. I'm just, for the sake of showing you how this game is played, I am elected to show you a two-player map. Now, you might notice that there is the blue player here, the yellow player up there. There is a spot for a green player and a red player as well. Now, this is an area control game in which you're going to be trying to take over certain areas of the board and using those to influence your ability to increase your glory. The big thing about the game is that, you know, defeating your opponent in combat or building yourself up or whatever, it's all to get glory points, which, for the sake of this prototype that I was sent, are represented by these golden coins that you see here. Glory points are used for a couple different things, but the main thing that they're going to be used for to win the game is to place your markers on these hills of Rome. So you can kind of see how that little cube there fits into the hill of Rome there. At the end of the game, whoever has the most of these cubes in the hills of Rome will eventually be declared the winner of the game. Each player does get a player board, like so, for the purpose of the fact that, like, for room, I did not elect to put this down in front of me, but you can see there are spots up here for divinity cards, which are important because they allow you to, like, when you dedicate temples to certain gods, you'll get certain cards that'll have certain powers for you. You're also, like, if you do not get enough gladiators for the gladiator combat, which you can see that board over there, right there, they will, like, you'll have to have slaves on here, and I'll talk more about gladiator combat in a little bit. But also, I just want to mention that there is, each person gets a hero. This is kind of like the leader of your army, and the hero is represented, for this case. Now, there will be miniatures in the published game, but I mean, I just have this very large meeple that represents the heroes. And the hero, as they succeed in combat, so that you get to level them up, and they're going to gain health. The health isn't so much used in combat on the board, but the health is definitely used in the arena. And being the winner of the arena gets you a lot of glory points, and is very, very helpful as far as like getting those glory points that can be used to achieve more influence in the hills of Rome. But regardless of any of that, I've gone ahead and set up the game. In each spot, you'll notice that there is one of these randomly chosen like markers, and like this is a temple, and that happens to be in that location. Later on in the game, you'll be building up, like, you know, farms, which are represented by these barns, barracks represented by these forts, and temples represented by, this looks like a Parthenon or something like that. And again, these components could change when the game gets published, but so just keep that in mind as I show you this prototype. Each person will get a deck of cards. These are a deck of resource cards that you'll have. This isn't something where you draw them randomly. When you purchase cards, you get to pick the ones that you want and get to decide the ones that you want as the game is played. So after you get the game set up, it's a fairly standard game as far as one person takes a turn, the other person takes a turn, and so on and so forth. And like if you are at like with more players, obviously it just goes around the table clockwise. On each person's turn, you get to take a farm action, a barracks action, and a temple action. And depending upon the number of those buildings that you control, you get to do that many of those types of actions. Now, it should be noted, and you might be able to see here, that like in your home capital, in this spot over here, you have a temple, you have a barracks, you have a farm there. So you don't have to, like, you're all, like, as long as you control your capital, which you're most likely going to throughout the entire game, like, as long as you control that capital, you will, like, have those at the very least. Obviously, as you control more of these areas out here and you build up more of these locations out here, you're going to get more of those actions. Now, you can take your farm action, your temple action, and your barracks action in any order you like, but you have to finish that action. So you can't take a barracks action, do half of it, then take a farm action, then complete your barracks action. You have to take, like, so when you say barracks, I've got 3 barracks, that means I get 3 barracks actions. You have to do all 3 of those before you decide to do a temple or before you decide to do a farm action. All right, hope you're still with me here after all that hyperbole. Oh, and I should mention that the board is fairly set up randomly. As far as the beginning locations for the armies, each person will get a randomly placed infantry in several different locations. You do that by drawing. Each one of these decks has like a color on it. Like these are yellow here. That's the yellow deck. Over here, this is like the blue deck. And so what you do is, like, when you set up the game, you point to a spot, and then everybody shuffles up an equal number of cards into a deck, and then you draw the card and, like, okay, this is a blue spot, and you put a blue infantry there, and you move on to all of these locations that have one of these green boxes on there. After all that is said and done, then each person will take in turn to build up the armies that are in these locations. You get to put 1 hero down, 2 elite soldiers down, and then the rest are just your standard infantry that you get to place. All right, so now then, so on your turn, as I said, you get to take a farm action, a barracks action, and a temple action. You get to take those in any order. Now, just very quickly, and this little player aid you get, like you can see, the farm action consists of choosing a card, discarding a card, and then moving troops. A barracks action, recruit an infantry unit, upgrade an infantry unit, or attack. And then finally, a temple action allows you to play a card. So the big thing is that like farm actions allow you to draw cards. And as I said, you get to draw the card from the deck that you want. You get to go through these and you get to look. Now the cards themselves are double action. Like you'll see some, like here is like for... like in combat, it says you are immune to an elite attack. You could save this card for a combat, but you could also use it for a wood. And why is a wood important? Because, as you can see here, if you decide to build something, you can see wood is needed to build a farm. Like here you have stone is needed to build a barracks, and then gold is needed to build a temple. And you can notice that you can also build like these two with gold as well if you choose to do so. So I like dual purpose cards. I always enjoyed that. So like usually like farm actions will be taken to put cards into your hand, so then you can be able to have that card available to be used. Now, sometimes what will happen is, like, you'll notice that one of the actions was discarding a card. You might be saying, well, why would I want to discard a card? Well, when you discard a card, like the number, whatever card is in the discard pile, and these are like everybody's cards that they put in front of you, you discard. And once you've gone through all your cards, you get to shuffle them up and play them again. So you don't run out of cards. But the number that's located up here will determine who is the first player the next round. So you're going to look, whoever has the highest number will get to go first the next round. So sometimes you'll discard a card for another action, for another purpose of just being able to be, having the ability to go first. So it's just something to keep in mind as well. But the big thing is that you will be able to move troops. So when you move troops, you get to pick a location It could, and it doesn't matter. You could say this is my location, and you get to move all the troops that are in that location. You don't have to move them all together, but they get to move to one space that's close to them. Now you might notice that in the middle of the board is this kind of like the Rome right here, and you are allowed to move troops into Rome. There can be a maximum of 16 troops in there at any one time. That does not include heroes. Heroes aren't considered to be a troop because it's just like one person. But you can't fight anybody in Rome. But you'll notice that Rome borders everything. So Rome can be a very, very important spot to have troops in because you can use it to reinforce like other places. You can use it to move in, like basically the threat, like I have a bunch of troops here, I can move them out, I can attack with them. So like, because you could, take these and move them to here, or it's adjacent. So it's a very, very quick way to move troops to another spot. And obviously with multiple farm actions, you can move troops relatively quickly and get them to places where maybe your opponents weren't expecting to have them show up. All right, so that is the farm actions. Now the barracks actions, like recruit an infantry unit, upgrade a unit, or like attack. Pretty straightforward as far as recruiting units and upgrading units. They're just any place that you have a unit, you can upgrade them. You can add infantry to a spot that you have, or in a spot that you have a settlement, you can go ahead and build a troop in those spots as well. Upgrading, you upgrade a troop to an elite, and I'll talk about attacking here in just a little bit. But it should be mentioned that just because you may have like a bunch of troops in the same spot as somebody else, you don't have to attack if you don't want to. A battle doesn't automatically happen just because troops are in the exact same spot as another player. You actually have to do a barracks action to do that. Now, the final thing is the temple actions. Temples just allow you to play cards. It's pretty straightforward. Certain cards will have certain actions on them that you'll be able to. So like you can have them on there, and some of them are like very specific to like a situation. Like here is a card that says here, hold on, I apologize. Like say this diplomacy card where it says choose an enemy. You and your enemy cannot attack each other for an entire round. So I mean that'd be something that would be outside of combat that you would do. However, like here's one that's just like reinforcement. It says in battle you can add an elite or 2 infantry units. So like those are specific to a battle. So depending upon the card, you can play those. And it should be mentioned that like obviously when you take cards out of your deck, people don't know what cards you have on hand. So just keep that in mind. All right, so before I move on to battle and also talk about the gladiator combat, let me just talk about building. Okay, so when you build something, you can build a settlement. When you build a settlement, that allows you to take gladiator cards. Gladiator cards, and I'll talk more about gladiators when we come time to the gladiator combat. Gladiator cards will have they'll be kind of like a generic gladiator, like so, where like his attack is on a 5/6, his defense is on a 4/5/6, and he has a movement of 2. But he has no special abilities. Like some of them, however, like here is you can hit an opponent in his line. If he has more than 1 spaces away, he needs a 6 to hit. So like this is somebody that obviously he's got javelins and he can throw them. So like it has a distance attack kind of thing. So gladiators are important because if you do not have gladiators, as I said before, you have to fight with slaves. And as you can tell, slaves have a hit on a 6, defend on a 6, and have a movement of 2. They are definitely very weak. So you want to have gladiators when you get to that combat. All right. So, but beyond settlements, building farms and barracks just obviously increase. One, you get a glory point for building them. So building them is important because obviously then the glory points can be used at the end of your turn for 2 different things. Either building influence in the hills of Rome, or you can use them to purchase divinity cards. And divinity cards are purchased when you build a temple. Now, if you notice, there are these 4 different gods. You have Hermes, Ares, Zeus, and I remember Athena. Oh, I can't remember. The goddess of love. So, like when you build a temple, you will decide which temple that god worships, and when you choose that, what happens is that you will get both the shield and the the fight card that are from. So here's the Dagger of Venus and the Shield of Venus. You will get these two cards, and these will go, like obviously here you might have seen that here on the board. Those things too will match up with the sword to the sword here, and then the shield to the shield there. And you will get those two cards, and you'll be able to play those cards in battle, depending upon how many temples that you have. Then you can also, if you can spend two glory to purchase like their divine abilities. Like here's Ecstasy. Like your troops cannot be attacked for 1 round is an ability that has, or take control of an elite unit or 2 enemy infantry units and use them against a third player. So you have like these special little abilities, and you can purchase those with glory points. And there are 4 of those different abilities for each of the gods. If you build a temple and dedicate it to one of the gods, and later somebody takes over that temple, so like if blue built the temple here and then yellow showed up and went to combat and defeated that, they would then, the person that had those cards would lose them because they no longer have the temple that is devoted to that god. They of course can reclaim it, but obviously you can't have the cards to a temple that you no longer have access to. Now notice that like the temple that you have in your home there or whatever, those aren't dedicated to a god. You don't get cards for those. So just also keep that in mind as we're moving forward. All right, so combat. So like let's talk about combat, because combat's going to happen a lot in this game. If you have a situation where you have players and a combat occurs, you're going to first determine, like, heroes that are in a combat get to act first, then elite units get to act, and then the mass combat of all the infantry will then happen. But first things first, depending upon how many temples each person has, they get to decide how many cards they're going to play for this particular combat. Combat is deterministic. It is not, there's no random dice rolling here in this situation. So don't worry, you'll get to roll plenty of dice when you're in the arena over here. So what happens is that each player will determine, the defender and the attacker will determine how many cards they want to play. The attacker decides first, then the defender decides. This gives the defender a little bit of an advantage. I mean, basically because they're reacting to the attack that occurs. After they've both determined how many cards they're going to play, they put those cards, if they have a card, they'll put it face down in front of them. If they're playing 1 card, 2 cards, whatever, then they'll reveal those cards at that time. All right, so then the first thing is that if you have a hero that is level 3, the level 3 hero is able to kill any 1 unit from the other players' group. If you don't have a hero level 3, that doesn't occur. Then you move on to elite units. For every elite unit you have, here's an elite unit and here's an elite unit. So I'll just move these down here so it's easier to see. So this battle right here, let's just say it is between these two. Now this is going to be a very quick battle. It's going to be very obvious what's going to happen unless certain cards are played that are going to change things up. There are cards that allow you to, if you have this card where it's like hire a killer, you can eliminate an elite unit by playing that card. And so you'd be able to, if yellow was able to do that, they'd be able to, so in this battle it would be very obvious that blue is going to defeat yellow. But if yellow played that card, then they'd be able to go, boom, that elite unit isn't there anymore. All right, but normally in this combat, what would happen is that both players, their elite unit is going to kill one other player, so then the other player gets to pick which unit is destroyed. And so yellow would pick this one, blue would pick that one, they'd be destroyed, and now you would just go a 1-for-1 basis on what's left, and then obviously then these two would be destroyed, and then leaving that 1 elite unit left to control that spot. So as I said, combat is very, very straightforward. It's the cards in the combat that are going to change things up. Notice, you can use either the resource cards that you've taken, because you've drawn those cards can be used for combat purposes, but you can also use the divine cards that you've purchased that you have in front of you. So players can get an idea of maybe which route you're going to go, depending upon the cards that you have in front of you, and depending upon the different temples that you have access to and the divine cards that you have access to. I should mention that you only get, no matter how many temples you have, you only can have those 3 cards there. You can't just stockpile a bunch of god cards. If you ever decide to pick up other ones, you have to discard the other ones. So, all right, moving on. what'll happen is that there's 7 hills, as you can see here. Each of those have 3 spots in them total. So there's a total of 21 basically victory points in this game that can be earned. Sometimes a game can get determined, especially in a 2-player game. Like as soon as somebody has 11 of those, if somebody has 11, the other person can't win because the other person only has 10 left. They can't actually get back above that. And obviously, like in a 4-player game, like basically, like you can decide, like like if somebody has like a 4 spot, like has 4 more than anybody else, and there's only 3 spots left, they've won the game because of the fact that there's nothing left nobody else can catch up. So it's one of the things I really like about the 2-player game, actually, because it kind of becomes a seesaw trying to get glory points and decide, do I want glory points how do I get the glory points needed to be able to fill these up. And it should be noted, no matter how many glory points you have, you can only, at any given time, at the end of your turn, you can only purchase 3 of these spots. So you can't just get a bunch of glory points one turn, buy a bunch, and then you're done. So you have to slowly climb the ladder. There is a limitation there. But so after 12 of these spots are taken, so basically 4 of these hills are full, at that point, then you're going to have the Gladiatorial Combat. So each person, depending upon how the gladiators they have, they'll have a certain number of cards, hopefully, because they built settlements and they've been able to draw gladiators. They're going to do battle on the gladiator front. If you don't, as I said before, you have to go into battle with slaves. So you put your hero into combat. You're gonna have your heroes in combat, and you start on the outside range there. And I'm not gonna put like a bunch of, and I should mention, there are miniatures like these. So you will in the final game there will be miniatures that are going to be on the board. And they're moving about. And just this is a fairly straightforward way to handle the combat. But the way it works is that each player will just take a turn. They'll move each one of their units they have, each one of their gladiators, each one of their heroes, they'll move them on the board, and then they will go ahead and they'll take the actions that you have. You have to move orthogonally, you can't move diagonally. Obviously there's like walls here, so you could back somebody up into a corner like that, so people would have to come, they couldn't get surrounded. Normally, unless the gladiator says differently, you can't attack diagonally. And the way it works is you're just going to roll 6-sided dice to determine attacks, depending upon the gladiator or the hero that you have. So, like, here is the Oplomaki, I believe is it. So like this is that person that they can throw things, but has distance weapon. So like he has a 5 or 6 to hit. So like if he attacked, I don't even know so a 1 would be a miss, and then there's a 5, and then like depending upon who is defending, let's just say it was this Murmelon here, like he has a 4, 5, 6 to defend. Like you would roll to see if it defended, and then I would successfully defend that attack, and you wouldn't. People have 1 hit point unless you're heroes. Heroes have more health. They have to be whittled down. They can have up to 3. If they're a level 3 hero, they have 3 hit points. When you defeat somebody, you get to take that gladiator, put it in front of you as a trophy. The trophy then is held onto until the end of the gladiator combat. Whoever scores the most points, you get 2 points for a gladiator, 1 point for a slave. Whoever has the most points will win the gladiator combat. So you could theoretically like lose all your most if not all of your guys, but because you killed more, you could still win. You win the glory. Your team wins. However, if you lose your hero in the combat, you still get your hero back. But obviously it's a new hero. You place them back in your home, but you can't win. You can't actually win the combat if you lose. And so that was. Oh, and I forgot to mention, but you will get glory points depending upon how well you did in the arena. Combat, I totally forgot about this. Combat earns you glory points as well. That's why you fight. Well, you fight to knock people off their spots and stuff like that. But depending upon the number of enemy units you destroyed, whether it's 1 or 2, 3, 4, 5, or 6, you'll earn a certain number of glory points for winning a war or winning a battle on the board as well. And remember, glory points are what you use either to purchase these divine cards, which are very powerful, or to actually put your squares of influence into those hills to win. So there is no set round limit for the game. It is basically, like I said, yeah, once 12 of these are full, then you'll have your gladiator combat. And once you either fill up all the spots that are on the board, or you in a situation where like nobody can catch up to the leader, then the game is over, and whoever has the most influence on the Hills of Rome will win the game and win the fight for Rome. So there you go. That is Anno Urbis. I hope that flows well. It does. It's one of those games that, like, the more that you play it, like the first round of the game is like, oh my gosh, what do I do here? I forget which action does this, what action does that. But as soon as you get 1 or 2 rounds under your belt, the game just clicks along, and it becomes both, like, it just becomes a puzzle. Like, how am I going to get glory points this particular turn so I can put more more influence markers in these hills, so I can get to that point? How can I make sure that I have lots of really good gladiators, so when the combat starts, I can make sure that I have a really good team for fighting? How am I going to make sure that the other players aren't going to get more into the Hills of Rome than me? So it's a lot of fun. It's highly competitive, and I just enjoyed the heck out of it. But I'll talk more about that in my final thoughts. Alright, so Anno Urbis, the Fight for Rome, has a couple of things that I really, really like. I mean, and the game itself, like I said, is a lot of fun. I like games that are confrontational. I like games where I claim victory from the other players. I don't like, build... I mean, okay, I play games where you build up an economic chain or build up a resource chain or something like that, a little engine, and then you just have like this efficiency thing where I scored more points than you over X number of rounds. I don't mind games like that. I think they're enjoyable. However, my nutshell game, my like in my swing house game is the games where I am really competing against the other players, and this game has a lot of things that I really like. It is partially a war game. It has multi-use cards. It is also like a development game. It is a civilization game. You're building up different settlements and cities and what have you. Plus, it does take just like it's this weird like little break in the middle, a very welcome break, mind you, of like, let's just have a big giant free-for-all bloodletting in the middle of the game. And so it was one of those things where it's like, I can see people like going, whoa, 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 because like you just kind of crank the gears down, and all of a sudden now you're having a gladiator combat, and everybody is like diving in and carving each other up and trying to get as many points through blood sports. So and then the dust settles, you get your glory points from that, and then you go right back to like the thing before, where you're having a war game and you're having a development game, a civilization game, and you're all just kind of racing towards trying to get these precious glory points that are going to then be used for building up those influences in the Hills of Rome. Like I said, it is a game that combines some tough decisions, which I always think is like imperative in games. Games that like have you decide, do I really want to use these glory points for these spots, or these super, super powerful like divine cards, because those powers that they have are great, and plus they are a great deterrence factor as well when the players know that you have those cards. Do I want to go ahead and like push my armies across the board to take away important temples and barracks? And that's another thing I really like as well, because when you take those things from somebody, you're limiting them. You're destroying what they've created. You're destroying the areas that they have, and you're taking it for yourself. And then you are bettering yourself. And so like you have this thing where it's like, do I push myself to attack, or do I protect what I own? And the thing is that eventually, like, yes, you can build buildings and like you can create things which will give you glory points, but ultimately, like, one, you're going to run out of spaces to build those things because you'd only have a certain number of spots. But also what ultimately is going to happen is that you built everything. You're going to have to fight. You're going to have to move your armies out, and you're going to have to go toe-to-toe with players to get those precious glory points and claim them. And it could be one of those things where you're trying to get people to attack you so you can win those battles. Maybe you have some good cards in your hand, make them be the attacker, make them expend the resources to move your stuff, and if you can defeat them, now like maybe their soft underbelly is sitting underneath there. I do like the fact that that center area is connected to everything. I mean, it basically makes it so like nothing is safe. One rule that I forgot to mention, I apologize, is that if you manage to take somebody's capital, you don't actually throw them out of the game or anything like that. You don't destroy them. You do get 2 extra glory points for doing so. So That could be something that really changes up the game if you're able to pull that off on your turn. And plus the whole thing with the turn order and discarding a card and making sure that you yourself are like the get to go first next round, or maybe you want to go later because you want to react to what other people do. That is also really important. So as you can see, there's all these like very interesting, very tough decisions you're going to have to make throughout the game. And I just, one of those things is and it harkens back to my big time poker playing days, is that when you can force somebody else to have to make a tough decision, that is like the quintessential move of any game. You're like forcing somebody to make a tough decision, and that not necessarily is another player making that person make the tough decision, but it can also just be the game making the player make that tough decision. And then when I'm like, oh, I don't know what to do, that's the moments of the games that I like. Is when when I just know, okay, move here, do this, do that, collect that, give me this, do that, give me those points. That's fine. But when a turn shows up and I'm just like, oh my gosh, what am I going to do right here? That's what makes the game fun. That's what makes the game come back off the shelf onto my table and get played again. So there you go. That is Anno Urbis. I apologize. I don't have a board, a box to fall from the sky right now, basically because I didn't get a box for this one. But I invite you to go ahead and check out that game. If you have any questions about it, please ask away. I'll try to answer those as best as I can. As always, thank you very much for taking the time to watch this video. Hit the old like button, hit the share, hit whatever you want to do, subscribe to my channel or whatever. I don't care. But just remember to be the best possible version of you possibly can every single day of your life. That's my goal every single day that I wake up, and it is going to be my goal every single day going forward. I hope it is yours as well. You're awesome. I'm the Undead Viking. I'll see you next time.